Good evening, hello and welcome. Welcome to the Super Saturday debate with me, Anusha Soni. Our top focus this hour continues to be the very unfortunate train accident that has claimed the life of over 290 people. About 1,000 people have been injured. Prime Minister swung into action. You saw him spend an hour on ground zero at the crash site. He also visited the family members of those who are getting treatment at the local hospital. What led to this accident? What are the factors which are responsible? Who exactly is to be held accountable? All these are the questions that we will find answers to in the times to come. The Prime Minister has assured swift action on all these points. Joining us today evening on this very special broadcast is Mr. Dinesh Trivedi, who is the former Railway Minister. Good evening, sir. It's a pleasure to have you today. But we don't speak today on a very good evening for the simple reason that hundreds of people have lost their lives in a very unfortunate accident. Your first thoughts on it, sir?
I think the first thought always goes to the family, those who have lost their near and dear ones, and the whole country is in a state of sadness. You, me, the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned कि मन को विचलित करने वाली दुर्घटना है. The priority is obviously now we can't get the people who have lost their lives, but definitely we are standing by the family, getting the victims who are at the moment who are injured in the hospital, getting the best treatment and making sure that the line gets to normalization. Thought, people have been talking throughout the day, there has been debate and rightly so. But Anusha, I think today is a time to be with the family.
Yes.
And I don't think so any one of us can get into any kind of conclusion as to what would have happened. We need to wait till the inquiry report comes and then only we will know. The Honorable Prime Minister went on record कि किसी को भी बख्शा नहीं जाएगा.
जी.
And Railway is a great professional organization. They will get into the depth of it. Now, having said that, this reminds me of this is such a freak accident. I'll just take 2 minutes to complete if you have the patience, please.
Sure.
During 2010, a similar accident took place near Kharagpur. And I think the train name was Gyaneshwar, I think. And 150 died. Yeah. Almost. Yeah. Passenger train getting derailed, coaches going on the other track, and a goods train ramming into it. Inquiry report mentioned it very clear that it was a sabotage. Today's incidents, when I look at it, it's very strange that there are 3 trains. One Coromandel, what we hear from the initial report or from the television, I can't tell for sure, that Coromandel went into the loop line. How did it go to the loop line? Unless and until somebody purposefully fiddles around with the electronic systems, which will make the loco pilot and the train itself get into a loop line. Because unlike cars, we do not have steerings. Loco pilots don't have steering to change. They have to be on the track. And the track change takes place remotely. So who did it? What was the purpose? And the reason is, if somebody, I'm not getting into any conclusion, if somebody has played sabotage, then it was very well calculated that this is a time when the goods train will be there, some other train will be coming.
So can I make
if it is
with your permission?
All I'm suggesting, I'll just conclude. All I'm suggesting is, whoever is going to inquire high level should not ignore this fact, because to me, it looks very strange. And talking about Kavach, ye, wo, there are important systems. But that only comes into play if a loco pilot runs over the signal, jumps the signal. In this case, I don't think so that has happened. So my angle is very simple. Don't rule out anything. And let us wait for the report to come, then only we discuss it.
So you've been the former Railway Minister. You know the ministry in and out. And it's a very important point that I believe you're making with your experience and responsibility that you hold as a respected former parliamentarian in this country, that the act of sabotage is something that should not be ruled out. I want to touch upon the second aspect of it. I think after 1981, when a train fell into a river and about 750 people lost their life, this is the worst tragedy that we have seen. The death toll has now touched 290 and unfortunately it's likely to go up. I was speaking to some former railway officials just some time ago on the broadcast, and two aspects they pointed out to me. One was the modernization, the maintenance of tracks that need to be done, and certain situations in which super fast trains at a certain speed, if there is a jerk and the speed is suddenly increased, can lead to instances of derailment. I completely agree with you that in the last one decade, the instances of derailment have significantly come down. But those two factors that were pointed out by the experts, one pertaining to the excessive speed on the track and second about the maintenance of the track, are they the plausible reasons? Perhaps could be, as and when the inquiry pans out, to be one of the causes to be considered, sir?
Well, to the best of the understanding at the moment, precisely what I had mentioned in my budget, that we need a generational change and not an incremental change. But unfortunately, we have always played politics with the railways, and my budget was not allowed to go the way I had presented. Having said that, now this government is spending 2,50,000 crore or more on the railways, where I was crying for 50,000 crore. So modernization process is the priority. Safety is part of modernization process. In this case, when you talk about that tracks were not good, how do we know that?
Absolutely, yeah.
How, if the initial report of people saying that it went into the loop line, how did it go into the loop line? And after going into the loop line, it derailed. So unless and until somebody fiddles around the electronic locking system, to my mind, with little knowledge of the railways, it is very difficult to digest. It is very, very difficult to digest, and the way things have happened. So I am not coming to any conclusion one way or the other, but Honorable Prime Minister, like during COVID, when everybody was crying hard, he just put his head down and made sure that we give the best medical services to India, including the vaccination. And the world is today asking, how did India do it? So this Prime Minister is not going to sit quietly. He must be on the job. He will ensure that nothing of this thing can be at halt. There is no pause of modernization. Modernization is an ongoing process, and this government under the Prime Minister is very serious about it. That is why I said that the angle of sabotage cannot be ruled out. I'm not coming to a conclusion because everything to me looks very, very strange.
So, Indian Railways right now, under the present leadership, under the present government, you have presented budgets in the parliament. It's a facelift, a generational facelift that we're in the process of getting. The Vande Bharat trains, the high-speed trains, increasing the capacity and the speed of the trains, improving the quality of the travel experience. It's a new, story that Indian Railways is narrating to the people in terms of the development and also the experience that it offers to a traveler. Many these days prefer traveling by train instead of flights because of the good experience, punctuality, and the safety standards. Instances like these somewhere once again shake our faith that we have in the systems. What would you like to tell the people with that thought?
But that is precisely the reason. That we have, don't think that we do not have people who don't wish well for the government. And we have seen in the previous budget session and the other budget session, Parliament, they don't want Parliament to function. I'm not trying to blame any political party, but at the same time, we have enemies all over. who cannot stand the development of India. And the recent report also says that India is a bright spot in the world. So precisely that's why I said, to shake up the confidence of the people. Why? What happened in '93, the Bombay blast? So all I'm suggesting, not coming to a conclusion. My suggestion is one, that there is something strange has happened. I'm not concluding.
I get
because
that, yeah.
this way 3 trains getting involved, and that is what I'm suggesting, and I have full faith in this government, the Honorable Prime Minister, and I do not have blind faith. We have seen during COVID, and we have seen many such examples. So let us wait for the report to come out, and let us not get into any kind of conclusion. People have been talking about Kavach. I don't think so there is any kind of reason to blame that Kavach was there or not, because Kavach only comes if you, like I said earlier, if you run over a signal light. So in conclusion, let's have faith, let's wait. Today is the day of mourning, and I'm sure questions should be asked and will be asked.
So,
and proper replies will come.
So
and I'm sure this will help in a learning process.
My last question to you, sir, before you take leave. Today, I'm heartened as a journalist and as a citizen by 2 things. One, I saw the images of how there were hundreds of local people who just came with water of bottle and were trying to help the NDRF, SDRF, the people who are working on the ground, trying to give a glass of water to the journalists who are reporting. These instances are also sometimes a reminder how the local people are the first port of call and how they've come together in this time of crisis. And the second bit is about a certain degree of political solidarity that we have seen. The state of Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, Odisha are all opposition-ruled states. But despite that, there is an act of political solidarity, and everybody recognizes this is a somber moment. There have been very muted calls and political criticism. Some said, the railway minister should resign. How do you see this present moment in terms of the political solidarity, and is resignation really the answer in modern India as far as these instances are concerned? And I completely agree with you that accountability at the right time needs to be fixed.
So that is the strength of India, that the local citizens of India, their heart goes out to the country and to the people. They don't look at which government, who's the passenger, who's where. Everybody reaches out to help. And that is a huge, huge strength of India. Now come to the politics of it. Asking for resignation of the Honorable Railway Minister. I can only ask one counter question. Can anybody guarantee, any of the people who are asking for resignation, that if the Honorable Minister Railways concerned resigns, would that guarantee that in future there will not be any sabotage, there won't be any kind of derailment, there won't be any accident? So I think this is precisely playing politics. And if they can guarantee, I'm sure the minister will not take 1 second to resign. So this is where I think we should just leave it to the system. Indian Railway is one of the best organizations in the world, and Indian Railways has the best of the people in the world. I am very confident. Like a student of the railways, I have studied the railways very closely. Leave it to the railways. And all these reports which will come out will be totally professional, and the truth will come out, and like the Prime Minister said, kisi ko bhi baksha nahi jayega.
And we as journalists will continue to ask questions, and the right questions, but I agree with you. Today is the day of the day of mourning, sir, and I say a prayer for all the families who've been affected. I thank you very much for your time. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Thank you for sparing your precious time and sharing your insights on that story. Well, you heard the former Railway Minister, Mr. Dinesh Trivedi, an important point that he makes, that act of sabotage is a possibility. It should be looked at. That aspect should be looked at when the investigation moves forward. There are suspicious circumstances under which these 3 trains have collided. Instances like these in the history of Indian Railways in modern independent India are really not known. 2 superfast trains, 1 train derailing, ramming into another superfast train, and a goods train parked by. Act of sabotage should not be ruled out. But we maintain that only a thorough, proper, professional inquiry shall tell us what exactly happened. Joining us on the broadcast is our panel of guests, M.Y. Siddiqui, who's a former chief spokesperson from the Ministry of Railways, O.P. Singh, who's the former DGP of the NDRF, and Mahesh Zagade, who's the former bureaucrat, the principal secretary of the Maharashtra government, is with us on the broadcast. Good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Siddiqui, coming to you first. The Indian Railways has put out the communication at various instances. I remember this story developing last night as well, and when the first bulletin had come out, in your distant memory, I believe after 1981, this is the worst incident that we have seen.
Yes, it is a worst incident since then.
Yeah.
But then the fact is that railway is under-invested in the safety matters, renewal of assets, modernization, etc. See, and at it all, there has been privatization of various means. There are shortages, acute shortages of manpower. So there is demoralization in the rank and file of staff. And let me tell you that 4/5 of total accidents is caused by human failure. The rest is by mechanical failure, signal failure, then the sabotage and related untoward incidents. So this is the fact. See, it is because of that. Then at it all, there is a driver fatigue. Yeah. Driver, since redesignated as loco pilots, so their working conditions are very harsh. It's a long hour, 12 to 16 hours. So they are hard pressed, they are fatigued. So because of that, alert-mindedness slows, and they get sleepy at times.
Yes.
See, it may be
and so
human failure,
this particular
it
factor
may be signal failure,
about
it
a
may be
staff
sabotage.
About a staff crunch and the number of loco pilots being, we need more of them, is something that was pointed out by earlier reports as well. And the fact of sabotage, the former railway minister was also speaking about it. Mr. O.P. Singh, coming to you. The piece of rescue and relief operations, frankly, was swift. Thank God it was, because I'm sure we have saved a lot of lives with the swift action that has been taken. Right now, the focus would be to ensure that the traffic on these routes, it resumes as soon as possible, because hundreds of trains have been affected because of this very deadly accident, very unfortunate accident. Mr. O.P. Singh.
Anusha, thank you so much for inviting me. I would be talking about the response capabilities of NDRF.
Sure.
And the way we have been developing it so professionally.
Sure.
In fact, if you look at, on the one hand, if you look at NDRF, which is the country's one of the most premier organizations to have the response capabilities, and it is also having multi-skilled and multidisciplinary personnel from the paramilitary forces. But at the same time, on the other hand, which we were discussing with the Honorable former Minister before, we have a very resourceful and resilient population. And this is one of the strengths of our disaster management.
Okay.
Look at the way the local people communicated, and they tried to help the people.
Yes.
Not only to the responders, but also to the people at large. They were donating bloods and all that. This is the beauty of the Indian culture as well as the Indian disaster management response system. NDRF played a very significant role. It became very critical during the times of crisis of this kind. You have almost 23 coaches derailed. You have more than close to 300 people dying.
Yes.
And then more than 1,000 people getting injured. It's a national tragedy. It's a great national tragedy.
Absolutely.
But looking for someone who is surviving within the coaches and cutting through this mangled heaps of coaches, that's a very difficult.
That's a very arduous. That's
so
a very
now
arduous
the challenges
task.
before the NDRF, though the operation has already come to an end.
Right.
There is no doubt that not a single survivor. This is what I have been told.
Right.
That no survivor is there within the debris or somewhere.
But yes,
so now the whole emphasis should be how best we can restore.
how best we can
normalcy.
restore. And you rightly said, cutting those coaches, ensuring that all the survivors are pulled out from the huge debris. And it's a very challenging task. The visuals told us that story. I want to take in the last word from Mr. Mahesh Zagade, who is with us on the broadcast. Sir, one of the aspects that I was talking with the former Railway Minister, Mr. Dinesh Trivedi, is also the fact that there's a sense of political solidarity and leaders across party lines have come together. It's a huge tragedy that has unfolded. Why it happened, what are the real causes behind it, what led to it, we are yet to know. But it's heartening to see our political leadership together, irrespective of their party differences. Mr. Zagade.
Yeah, Anusha, but this is a national disaster, and I believe that such disaster should not recur. In fact, when such a disaster happens, then country comes together, political leadership that comes together, and there are no differences. Even if there are any differences, they bury the differences and they rise to the occasion. But having spent in bureaucracy for more than 3 decades, I feel that we are very good at management of disasters and doing and inquiring and all that. My only issue is about all this is that we have Disaster Management Act 2005. Its title is also management. We are in the 21st century. We have completed 2 decades, and we are having a high technological advances in the world, which are available in India also.
Right.
So our focus as a country's national agenda should be that how to prevent these types of recurrences in the future. This will take place, like a report will come, whether it is like sabotage or engineering failure or mechanical failure or loco pilot's failure, that will come. But if you take the 2021 report of the Accountant General, AG report of 2021, it lists so many failures on the part of the inspection.
But
cars,
sir, that being said, one thing I have to give to Indian Railways, that their safety record has improved in the last 10 years. You know, from the point of view of having unmanned crossings, from the point of view of having, trains derailing every second or third day, the instances we were hearing, to this point where an incident like this, God forbid, has happened in the last 2 decades for after a very long time, and thank God for it, and I hope it never happens. But the instances, the railway accidents have come down sharply. Why did this one happen? It shouldn't have happened. That's the moot question. Mr. O.P. Singh, I'm coming back to you. The disaster relief and the response that you were talking about, especially the expertise that the NDRF brings to the table, what does it entail? There is one aspect that I want to talk to you about specifically. There was a man who was going through a lot of dead bodies which were lying there in the morgue and trying to locate his son there. And that story is a story of many people, because there were bogies of general bogies here. So people would have a ticket, but there's no identification or a ticket list with which you can match. In these huge disasters, when there are hundreds of people dead, how does the process of identification really take place? And is there a way to make it more humane and sensitive to the families who are affected?
Look, Anusha, it's a very humane process. And if you have the mass casualties of this nature, it's very difficult to identify the dead bodies immediately. Or when you're going for an operation like this, I have seen in earthquake situations like in Nepal and cyclone and so many other. But this is certainly the biggest tragedy because so many people have died. But in such a scenario, it's very difficult for the responders to go for identifying the dead bodies, because at that time, the whole process is, and the whole priority is to save the live victims, you know. Saving the live victims is most important criteria. And then after that, when you find only the dead bodies within the bogies or under the knee, then you go for extricating the dead bodies. So identification, yes. But for that, you have very many things like DNA test you can do subsequently. You can put some indexing kind of a thing over the dead bodies.
Sir,
but here,
sir, I'm short of time, and I apologize for interrupting you. I wanted to go to Mr. Siddiqui once again, but I'm short of time. But Mr. Siddiqui O.P. Singh and Mr. Mahesh Zagade, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the broadcast. As we talk about this unprecedented tragedy that has unfolded, 290 people have lost their life, 1,000 people are injured, about 200 of them in ICU. NDRF, SDRF teams around the clock have worked on ground zero. The local people were the first port of call, and hats off to those soldiers who were there, the heroes who were there, who made sure that they tried and pulled out people, saved many lives, as many as they could in this very unfortunate accident, the chain of events as it unfolded. We would know when a proper, thorough, professional inquiry is done as to what really led to this incident, despite the best of the technology at our disposal. Today is a very somber day. It's a sad day as we have lost so many lives of this country. We'll continue tracking the story and much more here on CNN News 18. Right now, it's a wrap on this edition. Thank you for watching.